hockey fans, the Minnesota Hockey Connection is on the air. We're on the air for the next half hour. I'm Kenny Gallagher along with Jerry Burrow. And today we have a special guest, Denfeld head hockey coach Kevin Smalley. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, another season of hockey.
Goes by quick.
Jeez, I'll tell you. And we've asked last week, 2 weeks ago, we had Brendan Flaherty on. And what number is this for you?
You know, we were trying to figure that out. I ran into Jake Johnson the other night, and he was one of my first-year teams, and I asked him, hey, what year did I go there? Because I can't remember there go by, but
it's been a while.
2003-04 was, I think, the first year we took over.
So you got about 13 years maybe?
Yeah, I think we're on 13. You know, I spent my first year up in Proctor.
Yeah,
you did? Yep, I did that up there. I worked with Jeff Gunderson, who gave me a chance to start out getting my feet wet again with coaching. So,
well, let's talk about that team with Jake Johnson. That was a heck of a team.
Yeah.
You had a young ninth grader, Cody Hodgkins, and the rest of the gang there. And I got to tell you, I remember that being just one of the better hockey teams at Denfeld for sure. In a long time.
You know, we've had a few of them, but you know, that one always sticks out because obviously we had some
Staffney.
Yeah, we had some
speed.
Yeah, we had some guys. You know, you take the Johnson boys, you know, and you add them in there, and you take a look at you know, what they could do with the puck. And, you know, at any given time, you know, nothing really rattled those guys. It was like they just got on the ice and knew we needed a goal, and they went and got it.
Yeah.
So you know,
who was the goalie back then?
Very talented kids.
Who was your goalie back then?
Well, we had a few of them. We had a couple of them. You know, that was before the Zach Thompson time. You know, that was early on. Brad Scourge was one of our goaltenders. You know, Brad played pretty well for us in a lot of ways. And you know, we just had you know, we were actually, you know, not to change the subject, we were actually looking at that going into this year. I think this is the first year that I can remember that we really don't have a solidified goaltender.
Wow.
In a long time. You know, we've been very fortunate, very blessed to have some really good goaltenders. Really good goaltenders that came through, you know, and played.
Well, River Alander, who we had up through last season. Who is your goalie?
Well, that's a good question right now. We've got a few kids that you know, they work very hard, you know, and I think at the beginning of this year we're going to. We're gonna give them some playing time and you know, and see where it goes.
Is that kind of what a coach does early on? Is akin maybe to baseball? Who's that starter going to be? Who's that pitcher you're going to send out there? You've got to look at goaltender as certainly an integral position.
Well,
when you lose a guy like River Alander.
Like I said, I think this goes back about 8-10 years where we always had that guy, you know, one guy for sure, and always had guys pushing each other to make them better, you know, and. You know, last year we were very fortunate too with River, and you know, and Brandon Johnson was a very good goalie that, you know, didn't see a lot of minutes because of the fact that you know, he's playing behind this kid, and so you know, that's a tough situation as a coach, is to try to give everybody an equal shot. And we thought that we gave, you know, being behind a guy that came in with a lot of clout with the elite league and everything else, that you know, he kind of stood out in that area there where he made his name. You know, I mean, it's not an easy thing. You know, this year I don't feel we have a direct number one goaltender. I think that we've got a couple kids there that have been really battling, you know, through the summer, trying to get better, and I think that's a good thing to start with.
You lost a lot of players again, and who's going to be your scorer, probably?
I don't know. We kind of looked at what we lost. I think we graduated 17 last year. So, you know, that's
amazing.
That's a big blow, and obviously we're feeling that effect this year with only having 23 kids skaters. And
is that a low number?
Oh yeah.
I mean, is that your
that's for total JV?
Number?
Yeah, never been in this position before.
Oh boy.
And we actually had a good discussion with the parents here on Saturday, and kind of laid some things out on the table for them. We have some kids that came out that haven't played hockey before, you know, huge hearts to be able to want to come out and help these kids try to have a season, and you know, but you look at it, you know, we have a very difficult to stick them out there and ask them not to get hurt, you know, and try to. It's not an easy thing for coaches because you know, it's our responsibility as coaches to protect our kids. So we're going to have a difficult time this year. We just made the announcement that. We beckoned the Minnesota High School League to let us play 2 halves for JV, which would give kids 4 periods a night to try to savor it, and that came back as a no. And it's in the rule book this year as you have to play 3 15-minute periods for a JV game to be complete, and that's the bylaws of the high school rules this year. So we had to make a decision on
why would they
JV
set that
season.
rule? What's the... It's
I haven't had
JV.
time to really sit down
Probably
and...
insurance, playing extra periods.
Yeah.
That they don't want more than 4.
I just haven't had time to really sit down and have a discussion with them down there. I'm always one. The Minnesota High School League has been fair and wants kids to continue to play. And here's an opportunity that doesn't happen all the time, but it certainly showed its ugly head here this year for us not to have enough kids.
Yeah.
So we made a decision that they will allow us to play JV games, not the day of varsity games, so we can use kids. So I've talked to some of the local coaches and some of the coaches from the Iron Range, and we're going to try to at least savor a 8-10 game, whatever we can get for a JV games and play them on the opposite days. So, it's not a total wash for some of the kids that just aren't ready to play varsity hockey. And we have a few of them that are in that position. Unfortunately, that's our hands are tied.
Right.
As far as we certainly can't go down and play. I just lost a kid to injury on Saturday, and another one we're not sure about. So all of a sudden we're down to 20 skaters, and it's just we have to make a decision, and I think it's fair that we sent the message out to these other coaches so we can prepare them a little bit and let them know, hey, we did our best here to try to have a JV season. It's just not going to happen.
Oh man, is this a first?
Yeah,
for
this is the
Denfeld?
first time this has ever happened for Denfeld.
What is it attributed to? Obviously, the numbers aren't there, but
Well-
does the lack that Irving doesn't have a rink hurt Denfeld hockey?
Well, it's not only Irving.
Well, I know, but Irving was
you know,
such
you-
a big part of hockey in West Duluth, and I recall it from my playing days, whether it be hockey or boot hockey, and the place was packed.
Well, here's what you have on the west side. Here's what used to be the rinks. You had Gary New Duluth, you had Morgan Park, you had Norton Park, you had Wheeler, you had Merritt, you had Irving, you had Duluth Heights, you had Piedmont Heights, you had Norton Park. Those all fed to basically, back then when Central was there, most of the kids up over the hill went to Central. But you've taken away, they've taken away every rink except Morgan Park, Piedmont, and Duluth Heights. That's basically our feeder program. Well, if you look at the boundaries that are set in place right now of where Duluth amateur hockey is set the boundaries, and I think that's a big part of it. I think we need to refocus on some of that and make that a little more attractive for where we can grasp onto a couple of kids. I've had a couple of great discussions with Jason Watt, who took over for Clark Cool, who did a great job. Jason certainly has got his eyes open and is going to do everything within his powers to be able to try to get that information out to some of the folks and say, listen, you don't have to quit hockey at Bantams if you're out there in the east section with. Mike does a fabulous job, the tradition, and you got to be a pretty good player to be able to make one of those teams. And there's a lot of kids that get left behind, so to speak, or think that their careers are over with. Those are the kids we need to start grasping onto at an earlier age. If some of the parents and take a look at opportunities if their son wants to be able to play high school hockey and.
Well, there
Would
was
the high school league allow that to come from an East
Well, that's
program?
there's another can of worms you could open up, but being I'm not sure. Mike and I have talked to it about
It'd
it
be
a little
great.
bit,
I mean,
and
if they would allow
he
it.
agreed 100%. He thinks that for the kids that maybe don't make that team, why they couldn't have a chance to come out and play at least JV hockey for Denfeld if they wanted to continue to play. And we had that discussion, and he was very open-minded about that, and he wants to see every kid have an opportunity. It's just at the high school level you have to earn it, and you have to be good enough to make it. And so it just so happens that the program out there has been very elite for many, many years, and it's one of those things where parents have to make some decisions at an earlier age, or whatever the case may be, or the school district needs to go to battle through the high school league rules, being that we are all District 709 and we're all in one school. That brings up a great question, Sherry. It's like, what could we do? Is there something we could do there?
Well, it's got to be frustrating for you, because when I think of some real good players that went to Marshall, there's two good ones that should have played at Denfeld. I think Robbie Bortson played there for a little while. Jack Connolly.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
And as a coach,
Judd Peterson, another one.
Yeah,
exactly. I was just going to say, Judd Peterson ran our power play when he was in ninth grade on the blue line. People were going, he's only in ninth grade, but we could see it back then. Those kids are very talented kids.
These kids go to, and it's Marshall. It's no big secret. They go to Marshall for a variety of reasons. Maybe it has something to do with the parents. It's not free, so the parents are paying the way to some degree, and it's got to be frustrating. I don't know. How do you overcome that?
Well, it happens a lot. Where you have to be an understanding of these parents that are making those decisions with their kids. They have all the right intentions. I mean, if they want the lower classrooms and this and that, and the education part of it certainly is a big factor. If they're going to be paying money for their kids' education, I certainly don't hold a grudge on them for anything like that.
No, I hear you there. But the names that we just mentioned, my goodness, some of the best players in Duluth, arguably.
Yeah.
Right, at that time.
Yeah. No question. It's competition. Take a look at Hermantown. They're sitting up over the hill, and their school's getting bigger, and they're attracting more and more younger families, and kids are getting involved up there. Another good hockey hotbed. The bottom line is...
Well, does this trickle down to the responsibility of ISD here in Duluth, and maybe the lack of a job they might be doing, or some things that they could do better to keep these kids from going to Hermantown, Proctor? I
could tell you about. I can't really get into detail about how that would work, but I can tell you what we have done on the west side. We've reevaluated in the last 2 years and got some coaching at the Pee-wees and the Bantam level with some really good coaches that are basically non-hockey parents. Been around the block. Scott Kishel's running our Bantam team with Max Tardy, and Max was there all last year, and this is the third year going into it now, and they run our summer stuff with the younger kids with the Pee-wees and the Bantam. So, and then. You've got things like that are starting to be put in place, okay, and with that, those kind of people getting involved, it's a really, I think it's a great opportunity, right. Not only for those guys to get involved with it, but it's a great opportunity for our area side of town kids to be able to have some really good coaching. You take Timmy Kleiman and Max Holm and those guys are doing some of the Bantam stuff or Pee-wee stuff. So, you've got some guys that have been around that have played at a high level of hockey and grew up around here, as far as the Kleimans and, and the Holmes. But, you take a look at what we have available now at those levels, and it's really making an impact for some of our kids that are younger now. So, I see a great group of kids in the Pee-wees, a really good group of Bantams right now. That we have two Bantam teams. One, there's only 26 total or 25 total, I think. But, with those numbers staying, and if we can continue to keep those kind of numbers, we're going to be back on the map. But, and I think that has a lot to do with what we're doing in the youth side of it.
Sure.
Not necessarily, District 709. You hear the bits and pieces about. Well, my kid's not going to this school because it's rough and it's not very good. Well, it happens all over the place. It's a matter of who you hang out with or what you want to do if you apply yourself at a school. I've been out at that school at Denfeld, and it's a great school. You got great people there. You know what? Everyone's going to have a few problems here and there, but I think Denfeld gets unfair treatment a lot of times because of the fact it's always seems like when something happens out there, it's on the headline news. If something happens somewhere else, and I've heard some things happening somewhere else, it's never even heard of, never even brought up. So I think the Denfeld does not get a fair shake a lot of times on some of that. And the perception, when people hear or see that or talk, that's their perception of what Denfeld is. Well, I got news for you. It's got a lot to offer. It's got a great scholarship program for education. One of the highest amounts of money in scholarships available in the whole state of Minnesota for any high school. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Denfeld.
Correct.
Huh.
And a lot of my kids, a lot of my ex-hockey players and that have went on to go to St. John's, St. Thomas's, all those private, all these high Division III type of colleges that have great education. And they applied for grants and loans from the school, and I can't even tell you how much money that Denfeld is forwarded for these kids to continue. And the things like that don't get talked about, that people don't know, it has a lot to offer, and it's a good school. So I kind of my skin gets a little bit crawling when I hear people talking bad about things out there. I have a big heart for that school. It's been good to me, and it's been good to a lot of other folks that are very successful around this town, that they believe in other schools now. And I look back and I look at the loyalty part of it and say, you know what, the school was good for you guys, obviously, because the fact is you're very successful at what you're doing, and it's helped. So I kind of protect that. I kind of protect that a lot. Being an ex-graduate, and my parents and my whole family going through that school, and all the friends that I've made, it's just a great opportunity for me to be part of Denfeld. And if there's anything we can continue to do to keep that program alive, I'm going to stay there until we get that back on track.
Well, let's go with this year's team now.
Yep.
We know you don't have the experience at all.
Yep.
So you got some top teams, Hermantown, Cloquet, and you got some city teams, and St. Cloud Cathedral's always a top 10 team. So what do you teach your kids now? Do you teach them more defense this year, or more than you usually do, or do you have to teach differently?
Absolutely not. We're going to do the same things that we always have done, and I think it's been very successful. We're going to come to the rink. We're going to enjoy each other. We're going to have fun every day. We're not going to put a lot of pressure on us for wins and losses, and we're not going to grade ourselves on wins and losses or these kids. We're going to grade ourselves on how we're achieving and how we're treating each other and what we're doing to prepare for real life. And I think these kind of seasons going into it, people don't expect anything from you. Right. Well, I got news for you. We're going to expect a lot out of our kids, and our kids are going to expect a lot of themselves. Mm-hmm. So they're going to battle, and we're going to see where the chips fall. But I don't look at it as just writing off a season because we don't have the upper class kids or whatever. Sure. I look at it as a really good opportunity for us to learn, get better, have fun, and continue to develop as young men.
Well, I know that the Duluth Hockey Heritage Center had a concept, or they wanted this Just for Fun League. Mm-hmm. They didn't have any registrants. Nobody.
What?
Yeah. They've retooled it a little bit. I think they've got a starting date now. It was supposed to start, I think, this weekend, and now they pushed it off to January. And I got to thinking about your 23-man roster, boy roster. If they're having a league for kids that can't play high school hockey, and now actually the more I think of it, this is for like 12 to 16-year-olds. But how integral is the heritage and what goes on there in your program, for instance?
Well, every Wednesday night you look at that, you got that open skating for the city, and it's packed. You see a bunch of kids at every age level coming through there. I don't know where they live, or it's not, right. I don't look at where they live.
It's a city thing.
But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of kids there. They got a Learn to Skate program where they really help. They bring in kids from anywhere. It doesn't matter where you're at. They do those kind of things. So they're opening the door. They want more kids to keep continuing to come and enjoy the sport of hockey, or even just learning how to figure skate or skate. Great exercise, great environment, great building. I mean, there's stuff out there set aside just for that, and I look at it as, if we structure everything, if it has to be structured all the time, we're missing the boat. Because I think that there's a time where you have to let the kids go have fun. There's a time you have to let them not worry about what happens in the summer elite programs. Nothing against elite programs, but there's kids that want to play golf and fish and go hockey and forget the hockey when it's over and go baseball and do other things.
Girls too,
Exactly. Sorry about that. Yeah, but I got 2 of them, so I know how that works. But sometimes we have to take a step back and look at what worked for us. And I really believe that you hear people out there saying, "Geez, where are all the athletes?" I think sometimes we have to look back and say, we had a lot of athletes that played a lot of different sports coming through when I grew up. I know that, and it was always always had that opportunity to at least try a sport and see if you like it or not. It was the structure that they have nowadays, and the people that think you have to be a 12-month-a-year player to make it. I'm not so sure I believe in all that.
Do you see a time when Duluth goes to the one high school system? Do you see a time when Duluth has one hockey high school team?
Well, the girls...
It's been talked about.
The girls did it. They were short on numbers, and they made a decision to merge and call it a different name. And, I don't foresee that. I think what's happening right now, I think the scare and seeing where we're at has opened up some eyes right now, to be honest with you. I don't think it's there's a lot of stuff that has to take place this year now for us to be able to run JV games on the opposite day of the varsity. There's all these teams coming up to travel and bringing their JV, and there's all kinds of scheduling conflicts and when we're going to play and when we can't play and where we're going to go. So, the more things the longer that continues to happen, I think that gives pretty good ammunition for them to step in and say, this is what we suggest and this is what may end up changing. As long as I'm there, I'm going to fight like a son of a gun to keep that separated and keep our kids to have an opportunity out in the west side.
Yeah. They make a lot of decisions on money too, so that's why you're going to have a hard time if it keeps on continuing this way. And Heritage wants to make money too, they want that ice taken,
Yeah.
So it's a hard thing to go through right now.
So no JV team at Duluth Denfeld this year. Boys varsity game number 1, Friday, November 25th. You travel to Red Wing.
Yeah, we're going down to my friends, Bobby Rodgenet, who's been around the high school coaching and around high school for many, many years. We started playing those guys a few years back, and we've just had a great time. We go down there, we travel, we play, and they do a potluck for all of our kids after, and we mingle with their players and eat food, and it's just a great. It's a great time to.
Oh, you got 2 games that weekend.
Yeah.
Then Friday you're at Red Wing. Saturday you travel up to Minnehaha Academy.
Yeah.
So you got 3:00 on Friday, 3 p.m. on Saturday, and then the first opportunity to see Denfeld at home Thursday, December 1st. Eveleth Gilbert and Denfeld at Heritage.
Yeah. So we're
the Golden Bears
taking our show on the road, and then we're coming home for the Bears. So that goes back to looking at the schedule, Jerry. I've known personally every one of those coaches, and it's fun to be able to schedule yourself with those kind of guys, and and obviously. You take a look at what's built on it. These guys understand the situation I'm in, so we're hoping that our schedule, we can continue the schedule next year without making any changes, and we'll be back to normal.
Right. Well, I see Minnehaha, their team is up and coming. That's going to be a very good team this year. They're probably a top 10 team.
Well, Billy McClellan was one of my teammates when they played for the St. Paul Vulcans, so he's affiliated with Minnehaha.
So why do you schedule them now that they're good?
Well, here's the deal. I didn't know they were that good, but, flip a coin. It's either Jefferson or Minnehaha.
I think they got about 15 returners.
Yeah, there's we heard all about them. And that's okay. Yeah. I want to play good teams, right. And obviously we had a thing going with Bloomington Jefferson, and their program's pretty solid coming up, and they've had some good players, and you know, they're going to be solid. I told them, I said, if we can take a little sabbatical here for a little bit, you know, we'll be back at it because we like to play them. It's great coach. They're great guys, and you know, but you know, you got to look at it too. You know, for survival for these guys for a year or two. You know, I got to look out for that too. So we're not making it more difficult than it already is.
I see you still have that fun trip where you go up in the Northwest where you play Thief River Falls.
Yeah.
And that has to be a great trip.
Oh, it's a great trip, and you know, and there again, it's that was something that we've done for many years, and you know, the ups and downs and the roller coaster ride that you go on, and in the battles that we've got this rivalry now where, you know, each of us respect each other, and it's North versus, we call it North.
Does Marshall go up too?
Yeah.
Still and play the opposite days?
Oh, you know what? Good question. I think that I'm not sure if Brendan is continuing that or not, but I know that we are.
North versus South.
We call it North versus North. So.
North versus North. Okay.
Northwards.
Their kids are great. They're great sportsmen. The coaches are great, well-respected guys, and you know what? They like playing us. They come up and do an overnight with us up here too, and. But that's a good question. I guess I never really even looked at that yet, Jerry, on if Marshall's going to be doing
Usually
the
they
same
do.
And then you've got the Christmas tournament, your tournament that takes place Tuesday, December 27th, Wednesday the 28th, Thursday the 29th, and what have you got here? Apple Valley, Mankato West, Owatonna, and St. Louis Park.
Yep. And then we have another team coming in from Wisconsin. And they're coming in this year. What would happen was we were going to have probably the upper three Wisconsin teams in it this year, and they decided that they're going to have their own tournament. So we lost Superior, Eau Claire North, and
Who's hosting?
And Hudson.
Who's hosting the
which
tournament?
is always good. We are.
Their
It's a
tournament.
Wisconsin tournament,
Okay.
I believe. Jason talked to me a little about it and said it's something that they probably should go to, being it's their opportunity to be able to play and see the upper teams coming.
Well, we've just got a couple of minutes. We've had Kevin Smalley, head hockey coach at Duluth Denfeld, for the entire segment here. And just before we let you go here, we've got the Jamboree that will take place Tuesday. So that kind of kicks off the season. But UNB Bulldogs off to a great start, #1 team in the nation. Did you ever think that this team, 2 freshman goaltenders, a lot of freshman players, your alma mater, did you think they'd be at top the NCHC at this?
I actually did.
Got started? Really?
I actually did. You know what?
What did you see? What was the
I see the depth. I saw the guys that they got returning and the reasons that they are
The
returning.
leadership.
Correct. And, you know, those kids made some decisions to stay here for a reason.
Yeah, okay.
And if they felt that they weren't going to be competitive for a national championship, I don't think they would have stuck
Certainly
around.
a question mark had to be a goaltender, 2 freshman goalies.
I always said a goaltender could. You don't have to worry about your goaltender if you're playing really well in front of him.
Okay.
You know what? He'll do his job, and I really think that the kids that he's put in there, they've done a good job, obviously. But the depth is showing heavily right now. I think across the league that. They're guys that they bring out for their 3rd and 4th line guys, and some of their 5th and 6th defensemen each night are pretty darn good.
Boy, I think UND over the past few years, I think you go back to the championship year, the kid from Pittsburgh, Kenny Ryder. You had Kaskasuo, and now the 2 Hunters, and
Staylock.
I don't know if they've gotten lucky at that position, but it's worked out well for them.
You know, they've seen a lot of, they've been through the juniors. They've seen a lot of good hockey, but, there's always that step of calling it a freshman. But, the faster you can get in and get established and forget the freshman status.
Yeah.
And I think that's basically what's happened if you take a look at some of their forwards.
Sure.
And defensemen that they have in there in their first year. They're playing awful darn good for being freshmen. So
#1 team in the nation, the UNB Bulldogs. I wish we had more time. Kevin Smalley, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Head
Kevin.
hockey coach at Duluth Denfeld, and we want to thank the staff at PACT-TV for producing this. Go to our webpage, MinnesotaHockeyConnection.com, and our Facebook page. Find us on Facebook and like us there. And also YouTube. You can find all the episodes on our YouTube channel. And we'll be back here next week to drop the puck, Jar?
Yes, we will.
We'll see you then.